So good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Church of Religious Science virtual service. I'm Reverend Jerry Federley, the spiritual director here, and it's my delight to bring a special guest, Reverend Dr. David Ault, to us. He was last here, I think, maybe in 2013 as a part of a practitioner annual service here. But I'll introduce him more later. To start us off is Alex Richardson, our practitioner and also our board president and very active diva. All of that and more. So Alex, take us into prayer.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. And my backdrop today is when my granddaughter and I went to Cambodia in 2007, seems like yesterday, to support Reverend David Ault's school program. And this was our greeting at the school. See if I can move over a little bit. And they just made you feel like royalty when you arrived. Anyway, it was wonderful. So let us pray. I know there is one loving God, one giving God, and I know I am one with God. And if I know that for me, I know that for you also. I pray for all in what seems confusion around us. Confusion is a time to be quiet, to listen, to believe and to trust, and to pray and be grateful, and to note the givingness of God, to notice the love that is boldness in our lives and to our hearts. I bless Reverend David Ault, who speaks today on looking ahead. I also bless our beloved minister, Reverend Jerry, who continues to hold us together. I bless all of us caught up in a life of COVID and a new way of living, thinking, being, and listening. I am grateful for being open at the top. I see our strength and love while helping each other in and out of our community. I bless us all in God's name for our safety, our perfect health, and great loving decisions. And so it is. So now I will have a 3-minute meditation. And I'm starting off with a quote from one of David, I don't know if I can show that, is one of David Ault's books. There, I can figure that out when I got a background. So we'll do 3 minutes and I will chime us in. And this is a quote from Reverend David's book on Where Regrets Cannot Find Me. And it's something to take into meditation from page 52. If we believe in these things, simple and common, can't we believe that God will provide in all areas at all times? By allowing our prayers to be cast in the waters of absolute faith, then every facet of our life thrives in equanimity. Our ducks swim harmoniously in sweet demonstration. So I will ring the chimes. It always makes me laugh. I want to say ding the ding, but I'm going to say ring the chimes. And then take a deep breath while the chimes ring out. And then we'll do 3 minutes and I will ring them again when we're through.
we start yet? Oh, we're doing.
So today I leave you with a prayer. I call it a push prayer from the Anglican Common Prayer Book. One of my very, very favorites. Go forth into the world of peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast that which is good. Render to no man evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor all people. Love and serve your God, rejoicing in the power of love. And so it is.
And thank you, Alex. So for those watching on Facebook, what you'll notice that you missed most of Alex's meditation because Clark alerted me that while it said on Zoom we were preparing the live stream, we did not. So I restarted the process. So we are back to normal as you can ever be. We live in a constant element of change. And one of my favorite expressions, it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you react to what happens to you in life. So we are good to go. And it's my delight to introduce to you Rev Dr David Ault. I listened to David Ault before I ever met him. When I got into religious science, 2 of his CDs that I remember was The Healing Bridge and Traveling with Angels. I don't remember when he made those, but I have them yet, and I love them. And then I had the delight, my ministerial class, to have Karen Drucker and David Ault teach us music appreciation. Yes, even ministers need a class on music appreciation. And he has done so much more. He has been a voice and an advocate for improving human conditions for over 30 years. And he has also, in addition to serving as most recently as a spiritual director in Atlanta CSL, he has also worked with the Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. He has founded that, and it's now in, I believe, 4 different countries: Cambodia, India, Guatemala, and maybe one other place. Anyway, he's such a great soul. He did what I wanted to do. He walked the El Camino all across the top of Spain. He has written a couple of books, and I'm just going to let it be there and let David take it away. Thank you so much for being here and saying yes.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor to be with the center here in Vallejo. And as Reverend Jerry said earlier, I can't actually remember the year that I was there last, but I vividly remember that community and have a very fond space in my heart for all of you. So when Reverend Jerry sent the invitation to come and be with you virtually this Sunday, I was aware of the fact that our organization, our global organization, usually works around a theme for the year. And one of the beautiful things about that is when the various centers and churches participate in those themes, you feel a sort of commonality, a universal energy of everyone looking at and dissecting in their own persona and their own style what those topics are about in our religious science communities. And today's was called Looking Ahead. And Jerry said, talk about whatever you want. But I thought, well, let me at least take that universal theme and see what we can create together. And so looking ahead when I think about that, particularly in a metaphysical context, I realize that it isn't about physically what we are using to look ahead. It isn't about just the static nature of our physical eyesight, but looking ahead is really a portal to looking beyond. So looking ahead in our physical sense, we only can see what is right in front of us. If you've been a part of this teaching for any length of time, we are constantly examining and being invited to examine our relationship with effect. Looking ahead from a merely, we'll say, layman's perspective is to be seduced by or to look at the effect around us and think that that's all that there is. But metaphysically, looking ahead is actually looking beyond. It's an invitation to go beyond appearances. As I would often share with my students over the years, kind of a little mantra that said, even in the apparent absence of. And I'd have them repeat that over and over, even in the apparent absence of. Well, what does that mean? Even in the apparent absence of love, there is love. Even in the apparent absence of order, there is this inexplicable thing called divine order. And that is a practice, that's a commitment. That is looking not just ahead or planning in human form, but looking beyond and to developing the trust muscle and all that is required of us to really be on high noticing, if you will, as some of our mystic teachers would tell us, in being in relationship and understanding with there is a beyond appearance. And so as I was thinking about a great way to illustrate this, I remembered a lesson from a few years ago. And I know that you know this. So it goes like this, and you can fill in after me. I can't see the forest for the trees. I can't see the forest for the trees. What does that mean? Well, first of all, let's back up and talk about what is a tree. Metaphysically, what this means is that I can't see beyond an immediate problem, or I can't see beyond an anxiety or a long-standing worry if all that I am aware of is the existence of that thing. So I remember the first time I thought about this extemporaneously. Do you remember the days of being in church and having a bulletin? So I want you to imagine that you have something like a bulletin, and you can use your hand as well. But I want you to either take your hand or take a piece of paper like a bulletin and put it in front of your face like this. And then look at what is before you. What do you see? So if it's your hand, you can see all of the lines and all of the different parts that make up the finger and the totality of the hand. If I'm looking at a piece of paper, if there's words on it, I see that. But I understand that there is something beyond that. I understand that there is something beyond on the other side of this hand. Why? Because I have an experience of it. I have an experience of an existence beyond what is right in front of me. And so this hand or this piece of paper, this represents the uncertainty that my family feels because of COVID. This represents the anxiety and the concern about financial problems. This represents conflict within my family. This represents issues around job security and food. All of these things are real with a small r with regards to what is transpiring in the microcosm or in our everyday lives. And I'm not here, and I would never tell you to say that that isn't real, because in human form it is. Those trees are an actual thing. And part of the curriculum of coming in, incarnating in this human body, is that we have to navigate through trees. And so we acknowledge them. We take care of our bodies, we pay our taxes, we raise our families, we do the best that we can in order to move through this human experience, hoping, realizing that beyond the tree, there is something more. But spiritually, it isn't just a matter of hoping. It's a matter of establishing a sense of knowing. Even our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, it isn't enough to hope. It actually isn't even enough to believe. We must develop a sense of knowing. And so I can't see the forest for the trees. Well, what then is the forest? We've talked about the trees. What's the forest? The forest, to me, is the solution that perhaps we're not aware of in this moment. The solution is the perfect patterning that our founder, Ernest Holmes, would talk about. Do you remember in the textbook when he would describe the universe? Well, he called it a perfect patterning. How can you and I know about a perfect patterning if the reality of our human existence is all about navigating through trees? Because you see, if we don't lean into or become willing to have a relationship with the macrocosm or the forest, then none of these quotes, nothing that we read, nothing that we study has any real traction. And my highest desire is not to just give bumper sticker wisdom, but to create an invitation for you to find in your own way an experience of what we're going to call today the forest. Looking beyond, looking ahead, I see the tree, but looking beyond, I know that there is a forest. And so I think our biggest calling is to become forest people, not tree people. There's a lot of tree people. We've all been tree people. But what does it mean to become a forest person or to be forest people? And that's really what is an alignment with a visionary. We toss that word around a lot as well. But you know what a visionary comes to? The understanding that they come to, that the vision that they have, the vision of the forest is so vast, so big, that they will spend the remainder of their days in alignment with the vision, looking ahead to the vision, crafting choices that are in alignment with the vision, praying and seeing the vision, and realizing that even in their last breath, it still will not be completely finished because a vision has no finish line. Think about it. The earliest suffragists, those women who began the movement to have the right to vote, do you realize that those women in the beginning of that movement never got to vote? Not in their lifetime, but they set the stage. They were forest people, if you will. They had a vision of equality that the masses at the time could not understand. So when I create an invitation for you to be a forest person, stop and think about that, because it requires not just the ability to look ahead, but to look beyond, to not become seduced by the world of effect, and understanding that when this happens, when the stuff happens, and it does, when this happens, that this is not the totality of what is available to us. And thus the beauty of being in human form. Thus the beauty of signing up for this and allowing our consciousness to be tickled enough to want to practice and to get better at embodying this principle rather than just talking about it. So how do we embody it? Well, we have to set our sights beyond. Alex, who did the beautiful prayer and the meditation for our service today, she and her granddaughter, who's also watching, Becca, happened to come to one of my schools that began in Cambodia. They were there in the early years, and that work started from an experience. The experience was taking people on sacred site journeys arriving in Cambodia for the first time and having everyone in that group just be overcome by the poverty that they saw. The natural empathic nature within them wanted to do something. I was aware that whatever we would do wouldn't necessarily be sustainable. And so, what's the best way to utilize our resources? So, I went to the guide and I told him the situation. I said, it's natural that people want to do something, but since this is a one-off, how can we maximize this? And I said, I would actually like you to take us to the worst case scenario. He kind of looked at me strange and said, really? And I said, yeah, if we're going to optimize this, let's take advantage of the people's willingness and our time here and really do the best work that we can. That sent us all to the local markets, where the guide told us that there was a lake nearby. And at that lake during the dry season, when the water would recede, that refugees, transients, people who had experienced landmines and had their limbs blown off, starving children, all of them congregated on the banks of this lake. And he said, if you really want to maximize your efforts, go there. And in fact, feed the children, because that's really the worst of the worst. We talked about the logistics of that. He said, you can't just feed them anything. Here are the local markets. This is the type of food that you should buy. Everyone in the group was in agreement. And by the time we secured the food, which was going to require extra vans to transport to the lake, I went to pay for it. Guess how much it cost? $86. 3 full vendors worth of food, 3 family markets, all of the produce, all of the things that were transportable to this area cost $86. And it was in that moment that I realized that my perception of what good I could offer, that my perception being limited by the tree, oh, I don't have enough resources, I'm too young, I'm too experienced. You follow, you can relate to that, right? All of those trees were like right in my face. But for a glimpse, I had the forest. And the forest was telling me there is far more you can do, but you have to be willing to navigate around the tree. And that trip changed my life, because when we got to the lake, when we began to distribute the food to the children, which then sort of grew from something somewhat organized to utter chaos, as more and more children started running at us with their hunger and their need. When it was over with, we all looked at each other, and one woman began to sob. And of course, it's kind of like yawning. When one person starts to cry, the other person starts to cry. And I'm thinking, my God, David, you're the leader, hold it together. And I couldn't. And something very profound happened on the banks of that lake in Cambodia, because I made a vow. And the vow was, I'm available. You see, that vow came from a story that I had read in an airline magazine. It was from a travel writer by the name of Doug Boyd. And he said, the most powerful mantra that you can ever say is, I'm available. And look out, because if you mean it, he was saying, if you are sincere with that vow, your whole world will change. And on the banks of that lake, after distributing the food and having my heart sort of burst open, I knew that there was something here for me. I didn't know the how. Many of you can understand not knowing the how. But when you say, I'm available to the forest, to the bigger picture, it's a surrender. It's a surrendering to that which is the formless, and understanding that that which is the form, the tree, the excuse, the age, the economic challenge, whatever it might be, all of those things become muted and dissolved in order to give you the open landscape to the greater forest. But it's almost like the Indiana Jones movie where he was at a cliff and there was no way to get to the other side, and the enemy is running after him, and it's all of a sudden the bridge appears. That's what it means for you and I to embody this principle. We must go into and face the tree. We must go into and face the obstacle. We must see it for what it is, acknowledge it, and then surrender to the greater knowing of the existence and the beauty and the vastness and the mystery of the forest. So my invitation to you is to be forest people. I sent a quote to our friend here in your community, Clark, that came from our founder, Ernest Holmes. And he said this: there is no limit to the law. Let's stop for a minute and think about that. There is no limit to the law. So what is the law? The law, in essence, is saying that everything that we experience in form begins in thought. The law then takes the thought, creates our existence based on the inner atmosphere or the quality of that thought. It isn't actually that complicated. The law is an impartial law. Therefore, as our founder said, the world is a mirror reflecting our internal atmosphere. If my internal world is all about the trees, this tree, this tree, this tree, this tree, then my world that is being mirrored to me is nothing but the tree. But if my inner world is, yes, I acknowledge the tree, I see the tree, I will do what I need to do, and there is a forest. And when I cultivate that inner awareness, then the forest can reveal itself. And here's the beautiful thing: the forest already exists. That which is the all is already there. We get to participate and have more of it revealed with each surrender, with each mantra, each prayer that says, I'm available. So he said, there is no limit to this formula, this thing called law. To the degree that I can envision it and surrender to it is the degree in which I experience it. But he said, but there appears to be a limit to our understanding of it. And if there is a limit to our understanding of it, how do we gain more understanding? The only way that I've determined or experienced a greater awareness or understanding is to go into the mystery, to show up, to say, I'm available. And so in our world today, in the division that we see, in the heightened uncertainty, experiencing together what I've been calling a global reset, so many things that were labeled familiar being wiped away. Where are we with all of that? Do we teeter-totter more towards the side of an anxiousness and a worry and finding ourselves wanting to somehow control it? In other words, being lost in the trees? Or are we looking at all of this change? Change is natural, change is essential. Are we looking at the widespread, massive tsunami of change, taking a deep breath, doing what it is that we can do, but also saying, I'm available. I'm available to be a forest person. I'm available to be one of those who doesn't spend a lot of time talking about the density of the tree, but ushers in a new experience of living, a vision, if you will, being a visionary of what is to come. Because one of the things to remember is that there is no us and them. I know it seems that way. I know it seems very real. I know that the world broadcasts to us constantly division, us and them thinking. And that's very much the mindset of tree people. But forest people understand that even though it appears that there is separation, that everything is one organism. We are all one thing. That's not going to mean anything unless we venture into, with a willing heart, to see exactly how do I develop an understanding, a greater understanding of that oneness. That's done by one conversation at a time, by facing one fear at a time, by going up to one tree, one tree of economic uncertainty, or one tree of a health issue, or one tree of a conflict within the family, and looking at that tree, acknowledging the small r reality, but then saying, I'm available to the capital R reality. What would happen, do you think, if you and, let's say, a couple of your friends agreed to do that together? I love accountability. I love mastermind. I love community that together gets on board and they understand the nature of the ebb and the flow. That there are days when I am totally in the ebb and totally seduced by the trees. But on that day, someone in that group, someone who is in my accountability sphere, reminds me, doesn't chastise me, but reminds me that solution also exists. And when we are able to love one another through the rhythm, the natural rhythm of the ebb and the flow, great significant revelation happens. I say the word revelation because the root of that is reveal. That which is the existing force is revealed at a greater degree, to the degree that we take on the mantle of being a forest person is the degree in which we experience the forest. How is that so? How is it that you and I can walk on the same planet and have two different experiences? Well, that tells you something about the power of consciousness, the power of the inner atmosphere, and how our inner atmosphere, the development of that consciousness, affects the way we experience the world around us. And so it's one thing to talk at you and give you these things, but it's another thing to encourage you and to invite you to try it. In those beginning stages in Cambodia, where Alex and her granddaughter Becca came, I had no idea what I was doing. Oh my God, when I made a vow on the banks of that lake, I thought for sure that it would look this way, that this person would come and help, and this person would come and help, and no one came and helped. And I went for the first a good 5 years trying to establish systems and really just bumbling my way through, made many mistakes. And it wasn't until years into it that I actually got approval from the People's Party of Cambodia to open a school, to open up an NGO. They're called a non-government organization, which gave us the liberty and the right to be able to teach without any outer interference. And that didn't happen overnight. I can't tell you how many trees were there in that process. But there's something about a vow, making a vow, a real vow, a vow that extends beyond just the rules of humanness, but a vow to spirit. It's quite something to say, I'm available. It's quite something for that person, Doug Boyd, who wrote that, to say, and look out, because your whole world will change. And that's exactly what happened. My whole world changed. My emphasis, my satisfaction, my heart started to come alive in a way that it hadn't before in doing the work over there. I came from poverty myself, not the kind of poverty that I witnessed there, but poverty. There was a lack, and the atmosphere of that lack still was in my consciousness. And so I had an affinity for these children who had no access to education, because my victory, if you will, was education. There's nothing more powerful than the gift of knowledge. And as we began to formulate these things, and two campuses came to life in Cambodia. Now we have two schools in India, some of the worst poverty you can imagine. And yet these kids are so vibrant and so excited and so willing to expand through the gift of knowledge. Working in Guatemala, where slave labor practices are commonplace, where there is no prototype to the importance of knowledge when you go deep into the villages and the parents don't understand. They're all trying to survive. They are a forest people, because it's just, what can I do now to get through this day? So it's quite something to go into those villages and to speak to the parents, to try to talk to them about the concept of a forest, about, if you allow us to give education to your daughter, these are the possibilities. Yes, it isn't an immediate return, but what it does is it sets the stage for a long-term solution. Those families in the villages of India and Guatemala, they're no different than we are. We're still very much seduced at times to immediate result. But being a forest person means that, yes, we tend to one another and we help one another, but we set our sights. We look ahead. We look beyond to the greater awareness. So what do I have to shed? What must I become? What must I let go of in order to be in alignment with that? It's not a one and done thing. It's a day by day process. Every year, I shake my head and I go, how did you get into this? When trying to manage schools in developing countries, in sometimes feeling helpless and not really understanding everything, why certain blockages come forth. But what it does is it keeps me on my toes, and it requires me to lean more into my forest nature. So you have your forest nature. It isn't something that you have to acquire or earn. It is what you are. But to open more to it requires an understanding. So just as our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, there is no limit to the law, but there appears to be a limit to our understanding of it. And the way that that understanding expands is by one willingness at a time, one willingness at a time, one willingness at a time. So today, as I lead you into prayer, Clark, I think the best affirmation and the most simple will be, I'm available. And I want you to think about the juiciness of that affirmation and the vow that one must commit to, the energy, the sacredness of speaking those words. And remember, look out, because if you are sincere, your whole world view, not your world necessarily, but your whole world view begins to change. Is that something that you're ready for? Is that something that you desire and want? If it is, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and just for a moment, let us recognize the existence of the forest. What does that even mean? That is heaven on earth. That is the God of our understanding. That is, as some say, the quantum field of the all, where everything already exists. The forest, boundless, timeless, immeasurable, no beginning and no end. It is where the host of solution percolates and resides. And when we allow ourselves to consider it, just consider it, then it reveals itself to us just a little bit more. And so in this moment of quiet and stillness, we consider the forest. We consider ourselves inherently as forest people, as vessels of God, as instruments of the all. And in our consideration, we also recognize the day-to-day, the humanness, the trees, the issues, the stuff, the to-dos. We recognize it all. We don't sweep it under the rug. We simply recognize it. And we allow that which is the forest nature to remind us that we got this. We got this. And that there is no thing, no one, no circumstance that can separate us from our forest nature. And so we not only look ahead to the invitation of the expansion of our awareness, but we look beyond this, the effect that sits in front of us at this moment. And we know that that is never the end of the story. That is not a period, that is a comma. And so we continue to play around with the idea of not just looking ahead, but looking beyond. We say, I'm available to this. We also say, I'm available to the right and perfect soul group people who want to play in this visionary soup, this visionary energy with me. I need do none of this alone. To the degree that I say I'm available for collaboration, for accountability, is the degree in which all of that then begins to make itself present to us. How wonderful it is to be alive in this space and in this time, to be able to hear words that invite us to consider that there's far more to our existence than it appears. How wonderful it is to be able to have the gift of choice and to lean our willingness into the greater reality and understanding of our God nature. I pray and I know and I affirm that this is who we are and that we invite it in now without hesitation, realizing that everything that we need is provided for us in the right and the perfect time. And if that feels good to you, if that feels right for you, then let's all make a vow. And let that vow be, I'm available. Wherever you are, if you're watching this in real time or you're viewing it afterwards, I want you to pause right now. I just want you to take a deep breath. Notice your willingness. And if you're really ready for a new experience beyond appearances, that all you need to say is, I'm available. I'm available. Take a deep breath in, and together we say, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you so much, David. Wow, blew my socks off. You are a motivational speaker. I would guess that you just enrolled a lot of forest seekers.
Yay.
Yeah. Even if it's a little scary to say I'm available and saying, oh my God, I'm at the edge of the cliff. What do you mean I'm available? But thank you so much. And for everyone else, I just have a couple of brief announcements, and then we're going to invite you to join us in the community room and unmute yourselves. And David is going to stick around for about 12 minutes, 13 minutes. He has another engagement, and you can ask him all the questions you want. But first, I have to tell you that we have our annual meeting coming up next Sunday, immediately after our service, the same as right here, our community gathering. And we're gonna do the finance status of the review of 2020, looking ahead for 2021, and vote for board members. And then the other thing I want, as I always do, is I want to make my call for contributions, and I'm doing a little screen share there. So that's our beautiful yellow building, but it takes a few dollars to keep it in operation. It takes a few dollars to continue to do our virtual ministry. So please consider giving a donation either on our webpage, firstchurchofvallejo.org, and you can use PayPal, or you can do it through your bank, a bill pay, or you can do it another way, which is drop a check in an envelope of First Church of Religious Science, 229 Springs Road, Vallejo, California, 94590. So thank you so very much. And now I'm going to invite you all to just unmute yourselves and ask David whatever it is that you want, assuming you're going to be polite. And I'm going to stop the recording and the Facebook Live.